what I want to dive into is the three most unknown but crucial pillars of nutrition. What are you missing? What is not being taken into account that is making it so much harder for you to shift the body weight, increase your energy, improve your recovery, increase your strength, muscle mass, whatever those goals are? Ultimately, these health anchors that I talk about a lot is going to come into account time and time again. And I want to really shine some light on them to make sure we can move forward and start asking the bigger, better questions, okay? So the first one we're going to dive into is stress and the gut. Why is this important? Why is this something that people aren't talking about enough? So first part is that 70% of your immune system's in your gut, right? So we're looking at this balance in bacteria. And I just put up a post just before about how I think with, coming into winter in Australia and New Zealand, obviously, I think we're going to see a lot more people that are running into colds and flus and general sickness over the winter because so many people are obsessed with these hand sanitizers right now. And unfortunately, doctors are also just handing out antibiotics like it's candy. And I know, yes, there are times where antibiotics aren't going to be needed, but the problem at the end of the day is this simple lack of understanding around we need a balance of bacteria in a gut, right? We want to make sure that we can obviously balance out the bad with the good, but essentially at the end of the day, there's still going to be both. Whereas if we're breaking the antibiotic in and just cutting out everything, we've now completely ruined the diversity of our gut, and our body is not in a strong position in order to move forward. So this is where, along the same lines as, don't ask for an easy life, ask for a stronger body to deal with it. And this is very much the same thing. Like if we can build up that good bacteria to fight off the bad and really start to find a happy medium that our body is functioning and absorbing and doing all those functions that you really do, now we're moving in the right direction, right? So that's step number one. Step number two is knowing that your mood and your gut are so intercorrelated, right? That there's more neurotransmitters in your gut than there are in your brain. There's a direct connection between your brain and your gut, okay? And obviously 90% of your serotonin in your gut should give you a pretty good understanding of, what you eat is going to have a big impact on how you feel. If you do feel a lot of anxiety, depression, all these things, it can have a big impact on these food markers, the information you're getting from the food, and simply the response from a neurotransmitter level that are making you feel down. Okay, that's a really, really big one. I want you to sort of mull over that one for a second. And then the last one here is quality over quantity, as I mentioned before, right? So how are you feeling after the foods you eat, right? There's so many people worried about the calories and kilojoules even that they're eating on foods, and even the government regulations, right, are like, you can have any of these carbohydrates or fats as long as it's 40 grams. Well, what that comes out of, or what you absorb out of that food, is going to be very, very different in the way of nutrients profile, and I'll go into that even a little bit more. But knowing that even how I absorb that compared to how you absorb that might be very different, right? So this awareness game, build that train that awareness muscle, which is, how do I feel after that food? Do I feel like I'm sluggish or bloated or not responding my best? Because no matter how much you suppress and bring down your calories, if you're choosing these foods that are inflaming you and causing issues at your gut level, your body is not going to be happy with you. It's not going to play ball. It's not going to drop the body fat, right? Because you're suppressing those hormones in the processes. Or you're suppressing those hormones in the process, and those mechanisms, those processes in the body that are supposed to happen in order to break down that body fat and able to recover that muscle, whatever it might be, are really getting in the way. It's not going to move forward, okay? So you've really got to look at the quality of those foods. And it's not, a good example here that we'll dive in from the toxicity side is looking at simple, what's the dirty dozen? What's the clean 15? Okay, these are two lists you should be really, really aware of, is coming into the toxic level of foods that we take in, right? Some foods are just absolutely sprayed and covered with pesticides and toxins that are going to cause a big issue. Others might be a bit cleaner, all right? Things like kale are even used to soak up mercury in certain places. Like, you could think you're having the healthy alternative, but if you're not getting it from a well-sourced place, you're going to notice that has a big problem with actually soaking up a lot of these extra toxins that are causing a problem. So I'm going to dive into why that's an issue as well. Okay, so these are the two areas that I want you to really dive in and take away from today's conversation, is knowing that if we can minimize the toxins that we're taking in, our body's always going to work on our side a lot better. If we can start to looking at the micronutrients that we get from food, these colors and nutrients, rather than simply the calories, we're going to be a lot better off. Okay. So because I've already started on that, I'm going to work over those toxins. So understanding that if there is stubborn body fat that won't shift, toxins are likely a big part of that. Okay, you've got toxins in everything: the air, the water, the food, especially the meats, the cleaning products you use around the house, things you use cosmetically for your face, whatever it might be, they have a lot of toxins in them. And at the end of the day, I don't want to freak you out too much for this because you're not going to get rid of all toxins. It's not going to happen, right? But we can really put some measures in place to make sure that we're mitigating how much we're taking in, right? People are so obsessed at the moment with drinking out of bottled water, but you realize that's a clear plastic container, which is not really going to be that much more beneficial than what you're taking from the tap. So the best option to improve your water is bringing in some sort of filter system, or just a basic Brita, I think they're called. We use just a basic filtering that we use off the tap, right? So we're at least filtering out that crap in the water. With our foods, we're trying to make sure, are we eating organic, or at least well-raised foods, grass-fed meats? This sort of thing is going to make a big, big difference, because as I've written here, toxins are stored in fat, and that's going to be both in our own bodies, that's also going to be the animals, right? So if we choose over-processed meats and we choose foods that are a lot of fat, we're actually absorbing a lot more toxins from that food as well, okay? What I want to bring this back to, and a question I want you to ask yourself, is maybe the reason toxins are absorbed by fats, right? We want to keep that fact there, okay? If our body is taking in these toxins that can't handle it right now, there's too much going on, there's too much information, it's going to store it as fat for later, to deal with later, right? It's got so many things going on. You're stressed, you're not sleeping, you're bringing in more toxins, you're not exercising, whatever it might be, right? So you store it as fat. Your body is not going to want to drop fat, because when you drop the fat, you're going to release those toxins again, which causes an inflammation response in the body. So this can be a vicious cycle going on because the toxins are stored inside the fats. There needs to be some intelligent protocols around how you can move forward, because it's causing this stuff to be stubborn. It's causing your body not to shift the weight, because at a cellular level, this toxic load on your body is too high, okay? Now, a lot of people would have heard of carcinogens, things that cause cancer. They've now come up with something called obesogens, which I thought was a joke, but it is actually a real thing. And these toxins and these things that are coming into the body that are really disrupting and destroying your cellular health and metabolism. So by bringing a lot of these toxins and pesticides on foods that are actually destroying your metabolism generally, one, we're getting more toxins that are being stored by fat, and two, it's destroying our metabolism and our ability to actually burn that off in the first place, right? So this is really something we want to take into account if we're going to really be able to drop that body fat, increase our energy, and ultimately optimize our body, okay? This is really something we need to take into account. Now, this idea of, I'm kind of working my way back up the page here, but borrowing from Bob to give to Jill. Now, this is something that, this is what your body is doing to be resourceful, to be able to really be able to move forward. So if it doesn't have a certain amino acid, it's going to pull it from the muscle tissue. It doesn't have a certain nutrient, it's going to pull it from somewhere else, right? So if you're not taking in these nutrients, you're not thinking about the colors and nutrients you're getting from your food, and you're simply going your protein and carbs and fats, your body's going to be constantly pulling these different nutrients from different places. You're going to be malnourished. And the problem with society in general is that we're over-consuming, but we're undernourished. Okay, this is one that I want you to really take into account. We're over-consuming, but we're undernourished. So really taking that step back to make sure that Bob isn't borrowing to give to Jill, we're trying to make sure that we're taking that time to really fill up our body with these micronutrients, with these different colors, and really making sure, if we can dive a little deeper into what nutrients we're not getting enough of, you know, going to blood work we do with our clients is really helpful there. It's knowing that at least twice a day, we're getting a lot of these green veggies in, we're getting a lot of your reds and your greens and your oranges and these different colors to really make sure we've got a good base, right? If New Zealand, Australia, and I'm sure America is very much on the same, selenium and zinc are very low in the soil, right? So these things, they need to be really supplemented either through your food and through the different supplements you add in. So things like Brazil nuts, you can start to get a lot more selenium in. Things like, obviously, zinc, I think, is actually more of a supplement form. Taking in something like picolinate is a really, really good option there, okay? Things like magnesium are typically very low in today's diet, right? So really starting to find out, well, where these things are really, really low, it can actually come back to things like cravings, right? If we're not getting enough sodium in a diet, it might be where those chips and those other cravings come in. If it's something like chocolate, it could be, like I said, the magnesium that you're a little bit low in. So we can know a lot about that, but really once we've got that awareness, I would recommend you dive deeper into our blood work. That's been an absolute game changer for our clients, and something that if you feel like you're not moving and these toxins are in the way, it's not something that, unfortunately, the medical system is going to be able to help you with. You know, one example I'll give you right now is the ferritin scale that people are looking at a medical level, which is a marker of inflammation in the body, right? Is going to go from 80 up to 500 on the medical scale. Okay, that's a pretty big range, right? What we look at in our group and as a functional medicine practice, we're going to be looking at 80 to 90, 10, right? Anything above 90, we're looking at inflammation. Anything above 100, we're looking at infection. We're looking at 300, 400, 500. I've had 600, 700 come up in some cases. We're looking at serious autoimmune conditions that are really getting in your way of dropping body fat and functioning at high level, right? So many people are coming back with 200 and 300 and 400s, and it's never coming up on doctors' charts. It's never coming up as something that's going to be an issue. And surprise, surprise, thyroid starts coming in, cholesterol starts coming in, right? And they start putting drugs in because they're looking at little metrics they can really help. But really, at the end of the day, it comes back to lifestyle adjustments. It comes back to nutrition adjustments, and ultimately stepping back and looking at this more holistically. So, you can fight the medical system all you like, and I've certainly thought about it, but it's trying to make sure if you want to take care of your health, you have to be the one to do so. You have to take charge of this, seek out your own coaches, seek out your own experts like you're doing on this call today to make sure we're looking at these deeper issues. You're able to move forward, remove these linchpins, remove these health anchors that are ultimately holding you back. And these ones I'm telling you about right now are some of the biggest ones, right? Ones that nobody are talking about, nothing is being done about them. And these are ultimately things holding you back, right? So start to bring that awareness back to what's happening with the foods you're eating and the things you're putting on your face, the things you're cleaning your house with. It'll make a drastic difference. Even bringing in air purifiers, or there's certain plants that can be really, really good at clearing the air of certain toxins. All of those things are great. You might be able to bring some design elements into it at the same time to remove this toxic load on the body, okay? If there's any questions on that one, please let me know. Cool. And then the last one, I couldn't leave this without going a little deeper into sleep. If you're not sleeping well, everything else is going to fall behind. Okay, we've got to make sure we get into that deep sleep. Now, there's 5 sleep. We should be aiming for 5 sleep cycles in a night. Typically, each one lasts for 90 up to 120 minutes. And most people are waking up a couple times a night, so they're never really getting into those deeper levels of sleep, or they're missing out on a couple cycles, right? So if you are waking up 1 to 3 hours in, or you're waking up to pee, for example, most people over 40 just think that's normal. And the only reason it's normal, it's not optimal, but it's certainly normal, is because you've got this oxidative stress, you've got this liver overload, you've got these things coming through that are telling your body to wake up because it needs to excrete toxins. It's like, I don't like this, I need to wake up, I need to move forward. Something in the fitness industry that comes up a lot is they're waking up 1 to 3 hours a night, they're waking up every 2 or 3 hours later, because they're not having the right nutrients in their last meal of the day, which is causing them to wake up because their blood sugar is not in the right place, right? Taking that stuff into account makes a massive difference. And when you wake up in the night, like I said, it could be more glucose regulation, it could be more liver protocols, it could be more oxidative stress. Where you wake up in the night can give us a good understanding of what might be missing, what's holding you back, okay? And like I said, inflammation, toxicity, and overall that getting things in track from a health standpoint are the things that are ultimately holding you back. So the biggest thing you can do is protect your night routine. If you can bring that stress down, you can get away from these blue lights after 7, 8 o'clock, so after this call, trying to make sure that we're improving our night sleep, okay? You'll make a massive difference. If you do nothing else but drop your stress and increase your sleep quality, again, it's not just quantity, it's quality. We're going to make a big, big difference in our body's ability to drop the body fat, rejuvenate these cells, increase our insulin sensitivity, which allows us to actually break down and use that nutrients better. A lot of this stuff is going to come into account, okay? It's really, really important stuff. So the big ones I want to add in here is the hours you get before midnight are going to be twice as valuable as after. So if you're still waiting till 11 or 12 or even 1 o'clock to go to bed, you're missing out on some really quality night hours of sleep, which comes back to your circadian rhythm, it comes back to your release of melatonin, it comes back to the light exposure that we're getting in lights, right? Like blue light itself is not bad. And that's something we've dived into a lot with our light trainings with our clients, because ultimately we do need blue light. We want it in the morning in order to wake our bodies up. If we're still getting these blue lights from phones and screens and all the rest, later in the day, our body is keeping cortisol high, it's keeping melatonin low, and we're never getting that signal in order to bring our body down. So screens is a massive one. You know, there's been studies put out of like people shining a laser or a light on the back of someone's knee as they sleep, and it's dropped melatonin production by 60%. So if you have any electronics in your room, you have TVs, you have radios, whatever else, get them out and make that room as Simple, as basic as possible. It's there for sleeping, it's there for sex. It shouldn't be there for anything else. Get the kids out, get the dogs out. It should be focusing on quality sleep. The 2 S's is all we want in the bedroom, right? So really make sure you build those there. Make sure that we can really protect that night routine. And if we can get great quality sleep, that alone is going to fix things later on. So really question that. Are you waking up and getting up to pee, or just waking up a couple of times a night and thinking that's just normal? Are you thinking that's fine? That's something you've really got to fix if you want to optimize the way your body works. Okay, if you're not dropping body fat, if you're working harder and harder, or you even look at a cookie and you feel like you put on weight, I guarantee sleep is also going to be a part of it. Okay, so if you do feel like you have a bad couple of nights, you don't feel like you're caught up, that's where those naps in the afternoon can be a massive asset. Maybe you get to a Saturday or Sunday, get that 90-minute nap in. You know, trying to make sure that we are allowing ourselves to get in 1 or 2 more of those cycles for the week, for the sleep cycles, right? It's going to make a drastic difference to our ability to move forward. So that's another one. The main 3 for today was trying to make sure that we look after our gut. We look at what foods are inflaming us. If we're getting bloated, if we feel terrible after foods, that's going to be a lot of damage to the body. And it's not just going to be for that day, right? Someone asked me the other day, you know, one day of dieting is not going to improve you. One day of diet, one day of bad eating is not going to make it worse. Well, actually, I think it's going to make it worse for days after, right? Because obviously, if you're improving things, it's going to take a couple of days for you to clear out the cellular health, clear out the way things function properly, and really get you performing at your best. If you start to eating, if you blow it all out and you go out on Saturday and eat all the foods, all your carbohydrates, all your gluten, all your dairy, you know, milkshakes, burgers, whatever else, and you get this high level of toxic load, you're going to feel it's going to take a couple of days for your body to clear this stuff out. All right, we've dove a lot into the alcohol and dove a lot into these different inflammatory foods in the past, but really taking into account, really taking care of that gut is going to be a big drive in your body's ability to move forward. The second part to that is looking at the toxicity. You've got to love your liver. You've got to make sure this thing really works. It can filter out these things, right? If your liver's not working, you're not able to excrete excess toxins. You're not able to get rid of excess estrogen. You're not able to get rid of these things going around in your blood that are really causing a level of immune response. You know, if we're in a heightened state of fight or flight, it's going to be very hard for us to digest food. Okay, if our immune system's flawed, it's going to be very hard for us to drop body fat. And then the last one here is sleep. So try to make sure that if we can take that into account, we can take that time to rest. You know, something we'll say over and over again with our clients is your ability to perform is directly correlated with your ability to rest. If we can build that routine, we can really sharpen that axe before we start swinging. Every second we spend in the gym, or every second we do nourishing our body with proper food, every second we do really trying to move forward with our health is going to be double as effective if we have a good night routine. If we can really sleep properly and make sure we are taking that time to rejuvenate the cells, rejuvenate the gut, and make sure we're waking up tomorrow even better. Okay. So the last one here, or the last question I want to leave you with today is making sure that if you do feel like, you know, your energy's good or your sleep's good, I want you to ask a little deeper what that looks like, right? Because so many of our clients say that on the calls, they're like, yeah, I feel good. And then 2 or 3 weeks in, they're like, this energy has not been like this for years, right? And it's because they're good. What they feel now hasn't felt like that for 10 years, right? They were functioning at a 6. Now they actually know what an 8 or a 9 really feels like, right? And when you start to see that difference and you feel that this decline has been over 5 to 10 years, and now it's finally noticing that the thing's a little bit more stubborn, they're not moving the same way, that's why this stuff is coming up, right? If you've got this toxic load that's come over a couple of years, if it has taken some time to really move forward, this is where this becomes really important, okay? So trying to make sure that if it's been the last 5, 10 years, it's not going to be a quick fix. Let's drop 5 kilos and get on, be shredded on the beach. It's like, how can we get this working long term in a sustainable manner without constant restriction, and making sure that we actually feel better and actually is promoting and elevating our quality of life rather than detracting from it, right? And that's really the goal at the end of the day. Cool. We had a couple questions. Hey, David. Yeah, absolutely. I think we went through that the other day with you. You said it was sugar, right? So we were talking about neurotransmitters before. You're getting this quick hit of dopamine. You're feeling good for a second or two, and then you're going to crash 5 minutes later, right? It's going to be this constant dip and dive, and you're never going to feel like you're at your best because you're relying on this quick hit rather than long-term benefit. So the big thing that we bring in here is trying to make sure that if we can get an awareness of what's happening with your gut, what's happening with the way you absorb foods, it's going to make a really big difference to long term. So what I'm saying there is start to choose the foods you eat now as to how you're going to feel later, right? For me, I was always a big sweet tooth for a long time too. And it was like, well, I feel good for that 10 seconds. You know, you've got all these flavors, but then you're going to feel terrible later. So, you know, sure, it takes time, sure, it takes some discipline, but you need to be able to start to put yourself in that new light of like, who do I actually really want to be? And I need to make choices of that person I want to become, okay? Because if you keep making choices from this person now that you don't want to be, that you feel overweight, you feel low on energy, you don't feel in the right spot, there needs to be some positive action, right? And this is where I go through this a lot, is people looking for inspiration to create action. Flip that on its head. You've got to start with action to create the inspiration. Once you start to see momentum, once you start to move forward, now you start to build that momentum, that inspiration comes with it, okay? So the biggest thing I can ask you there, or say there, is trying to make sure that you really build that ability to build that discipline muscle in the short term, so long term you start making the better decisions on what you feel best on, right? I'm a lot more compelled to choose a food that I know I'm going to feel good on for hours, I'm going to function my best, I'm going to recover, I'm going to be cognitively sharp, than eating a food that's going to make me feel good for 5 minutes and then crash after that, right? So I think that shift will make a big difference. Yeah, ferritin, like I was using ferritin as an example, Vicky, but it's something that we'll look at other markers to see where it is, because is it going to come from a gut issue? Is it going to come from high white blood cells? Is it going to come from more of the liver stress? It'd be something we need to look into. Cool, team. I think that was everything. Well, I hope that was helpful. We got that done in a good 20 minutes or so, but I was just trying to make sure that we got a good overview on those things. These are the questions that people really aren't asking enough of. And when you start to get an awareness of what those underlying issues are that can really move the needle, really get your body feeling great again, this is really the ultimate framework that we go through with our clients, is if you can start with that reset portion, make sure we're removing the shit that's causing the issues and causing this inflammation, causing the low energy, now we can actually start repair the gut. We can start to add in these protocols to improve how the gut works, how it absorbs, how to make sure it digests properly, how to make sure that we're improving our recovery, so when we move and we get this exercise and we get these workouts in, we're starting to see improvements a lot easier, because we've really built that base properly. We've built that foundation. So once we start pushing, things aren't breaking down, okay? It makes a big, big difference. And ultimately, that's the big focus for today. So have an amazing night. Have an amazing time with whoever is in your household, whoever is important to you, and make sure that when you take this stuff into account, it is ultimately going to really, or should, increase and elevate every other area of your life, right? At the end of the day, you want to feel good. You want to feel like you're moving forward. A big part of that is being able to show up as your best. And if your body's holding you back, that shouldn't be acceptable. This needs to be there in order to, and I think this is a bit we keep coming back to, is you need to put that time aside for you. You need to invest that time, money, and energy to show up as your best, so you can really perform in other areas, so you can care for others, so you can really be that role model, okay? So go do that. Hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions or anything else you want to go into, please let me know.